Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today on building a website for export. Uh, my name's Ian Bennett. I'm the International Trade Manager for Australian Business Consulting and Solutions, and I have with me Layla Haj Ali, our Marketing Consulting Manager for the e-commerce, e-platforms, all things electronic uh, capabilities. Today we're going to talk about 4 or 5 things. We're going to talk about some trends and ideas, some of the terminology used in e-commerce, website, social media. We're going to talk about e-commerce. We're going to talk about global Google Analytics and landing pages on your website, just not for sales but for marketing as well. Now, there's a number of topics to consider when planning your website. Don't get confused. You'll hear a lot of terminology and a lot of ideas today, but once you've developed a framework, it's fairly straightforward.
And if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, you'll see a box on the bottom left-hand side of your screen where you're invited to type your questions in.
We have received some questions already. They are already covered in the presentation, so thank you for those people who have submitted questions. What can you expect today? We're going to talk about the cultural difference between export markets, different buying trends. How many websites do you need to cover your export markets? Firewalls and what they do to your websites in various countries. Websites versus a social media engagement or a social media strategy. And there's, like everything in the world, there's legislation around it. And is there a time when a website is not appropriate? So you can all read that because I can. No, I can't. But what it is, it's unfortunately we couldn't make it any larger. It's a table about the worldwide internet usage. It basically says there's billions of users. We sort of rank round about number 26. Our population is too small, but we do have 89% of our population using the internet, which is one of the highest usages worldwide. And if you can read the first couple of countries up there where we've got China, United States, Japan, India, etc. Just imagine if India grew 14% per year. The numbers become astronomical. So it's very important to position yourself, develop your sales strategy, develop your marketing strategies to inculcate it onto your online presence. We're going to talk about the top 10 export destinations for Australia, just in general. We have China, Japan, United States, Korea, Singapore, New Zealand, UK, Thailand, Malaysia, and Germany. With the exception of United Kingdom and Germany, we have a free trade agreement with the 8 other countries, which does reflect some of the efforts being put in by our government to develop these free trade agreements for the benefit of our exporters. Now we've got to really think about the modern world. Do we get on an aeroplane every day, or are we letting the internet become an integral part of our sales and marketing strategies? The top 5 market exports are China, Japan, United States, Republic of Korea, and Singapore. So let's have a look at China. We're very fortunate as a trading country. Our exports are significantly greater to China than imports. We're one of the few countries in the world that actually has a positive balance of trade. China itself is the online purchasing via websites is increasing daily. Uh, it's just a part of life now in China. You'll find that every type of mobile device is web enabled. They search online, they look at marketing online, they look at purchasing online, and it's it's a market that, as we move into there, because we've actually, as an entity, we've actually started our own operations in Shanghai to help Australian exporters. The the general stories and buzz you get out of China from various medium sources say that everybody in China is buying things online and looking online, where in fact it's predominantly only in the tier 1 and the tier 2 cities, because to do basically e-commerce, you've got to have a logistics supply chain, and logistics to the tier 3 and tier 4 cities is really not up to speed yet. And even though people say tier 3 and tier 4 cities are doing e-commerce, in reality they're not. So mind you, there's sufficient people in tier 1 and tier 2 cities to satisfy any Australian manufacturer, and the capabilities and connectivity in those cities are perfect for what Australian companies need. The next company is Japan. Again, we has a positive balance of trade, not like in the old days where Japan was the exporter to the world. We now have the good side of being a net exporter uh, to Japan. It's a very sophisticated market. Japanese buyers expect to see high quality products. They expect to see high quality websites. They actually assess a company, an Australian company, by the quality of their website as well as the quality of their product. So it's very important to think, when you're developing your marketing strategy and your sales strategy, that your website is of a high quality, to engage with the potential buyers in Japan. And Japan also has a reasonably high purchasing power, which makes online transactions and e-commerce a viable option as an export strategy. The USA, once again, we know that they are very, very highly enabled. It's a great online market for business. You'll probably find people in our audience have actually bought things online from America, and you probably know people in Australia that have sold online to America. It works well. It actually provides a pathway for exporters. Sometimes the convoluted state laws right across America do cause problems for imports of large shipments, whereas the online sales can, in most cases, move quite freely across the border into the marketplace. We know that most of the global logistics companies are centered in America. That's where their high volume work comes in. So the logistics chains for getting e-commerce products across to America are pretty sophisticated and fairly reliable. Obviously, we're talking here about e-commerce, but there is also your website can be used as a tool to market into this country. There's not too many modifications needed to be done. So America, the land of electronics, they love it, they consume it, and they watch it. There's one little caveat here, though, that when you're exporting products to America, whether it be online or via shipments, think about insurance, think about the legal liabilities of the insurance policies, consumer goods, product liability, service liability. And remember, America is the land of litigation. So get that strategy right first. The next market is the Korean market. Once again, Koreans import more from Australia than they export to Australia. So once again, we have a very positive position in Korea. The interesting thing about Korea and looking at your online engagement through marketing and selling is that English is not that widely used in Korea, and this is something that has to be considered. The Koreans have a reasonable disposable income, particularly in the B2C market. And in the B2C market especially, they're looking for, we've found recently that the organic products, the natural products, the innovative products are highly sought after. So once again, it's we do export substantial product via sea and air in bulk shipments, but the e-commerce market, the B2C, is quite a viable market. The final market we're going to look at right now is Singapore. The trade statistics in Singapore are always a little bit wishy-washy because it's an entreport where products from all around the world goes into Singapore, then goes out to the rest of Southeast Asia and Australia. So where products come from that actually are exported from Singapore to Australia is nebulous. But the market itself is very tech savvy. There's little restrictions on how you do business. It's quite a laissez-faire environment for both B2B and B2C activities. English is the language of business. And there's little or no need to alter your website, your product labeling, your presentation for your product or service into this market. It's a relatively straightforward market and an easy market for Australian exporters to enter. And your website in Australia is most likely fairly suitable for that market. So that's how we're just giving an overview of exporting at the moment, our 5 top markets. And now we get into some of the structural side of getting your website ready to market and to sell into export markets. Layla.
Thanks, Ian. So obviously each of the different markets that Ian's gone through, the 5 that we'll be looking at today, would have different motivations for purchasing. So it might be that they're driven to purchase based on price. It may be that they're motivated to purchase based on quality, but it might also be that they're motivated to purchase based on, the country of origin. So a lot of people will purchase technical equipment from Germany because it has that perception that it's a high quality product. So they might be some of the drivers. But it could also be that the product is a quality product, and that might motivate that purchaser to purchase. The point being is, regardless of the country that you're going to be exporting into, you need to consider what the motivation is of that buyer so that you can reflect that in your website and in your other means of marketing as well. So buying cycles is something that you should also consider when looking at exporting over to other countries, and it should also be reflected on your website. The reason why it's important is because it would then influence your sales projections. Different markets will obviously have different buying cycles, being traditional seasonality, but it could also be particular religious holidays, for example, or country-specific festivities that they may be looking at. that you should then reflect onto your website. So for example, if you're exporting to China, then it might be suitable to have something about Chinese New Year on your website. Or if you're exporting to the US, then they have a really popular Black Friday sales, and it might be worthwhile then reflecting that on your website. The reason why that's so popular and why it's so important is because you will then allow that user, be it somebody that's coming to purchase from your site or somebody that's coming to investigate more information about your site, they will then understand that you understand their country, and that you're designing and producing something that's specifically for them. They'll feel that you are aligning yourself with them, will feel more comfortable to purchase. Also, something that's important to consider is that each of those markets that Ian went through previously would have different psychological processes that they go through when they're going through their decision-making process. So China, for example, is extremely different to Japan. The US is then obviously different to everybody, but then Singapore, their buying patterns are quite similar to Australia. So there's things to consider when developing your site. Websites, and the reason why we recommend export businesses have a website is because it's open 24/7. It allows people in other markets who are maybe awake while you're asleep to contact you or to purchase online. And we always say it's fantastic to be able to wake up in the morning and know that you've sold a heap of product while you were sleeping. So it's the reason why you're available, why we recommend having a website. Even if you're not an e-commerce business, if you're not selling products online, people can still come across your business. So you're making connections and generating leads while you're asleep. So there's pretty much what we've been talking about, the last couple of slides has mostly been aligned to selling online. But your website as an export business could be built to help market your business. So what you need to do as a business is decide whether or not your website is there to help you sell a product, or if it's there to help you market your product or your service. You could sell your service online as well. So depending on your objectives, there's a couple of different things to consider. If your website is there to help you sell, which is often then referred to as an e-commerce website, then your site needs to have different functionality. And I would hope that you're working with a web developer or a marketing agency that can help you work through these things. So you would need to have functionality that would allow people to actually purchase online. You would need to then think about things like calls to action. So what are you going to say on your website to drive a person to purchase? Shipping, insurances like Ian mentioned before, privacy policies, not sharing information with third-party people, those types of things you'll need to consider with an e-commerce website. If your website's objective is to market, on the other side, so it's there to represent who you are as a business, then that's often referred to as a brochure website. Then obviously the purpose of that website is to position you as a subject matter expert, to explain what's so special about your product or your service, to engage people and get them interested in what you have to sell or to offer as a service. So then again, it needs different, your website would have different requirements. So you'd have to think about calls to action as well, but in a different way, because you'd want people to sign up to e-newsletters or to send you an email. Your website, if it is a marketing website, is also really great if you have distributors that are on the ground in the country that you are exporting to. So that website then can help those distributors sell your product or promote your product. And it also lets you to maintain control over your brand in that market, because you're referring people back to that corporate site. One thing that we say all the time, or that I say all the time as a marketer, is that you've got to have a plan. A lot of businesses, export businesses in particular, make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, I've gone and I've built a website, and now because I've built it, I've built it and they will come type of methodology. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that. a website is only half your battle. You then need to think about what you're going to do with that website after it's built. So how are you going to promote that site? What are the strategies that you've implemented to market your business and to drive traffic through to that website? How are you going to encourage people to engage with you? Those are the types of things that you need to think about. Essentially, a website is a modern day version of a brochure. So I always encourage people to think about it, if you had gone and you went to the effort of designing a brochure and getting it printed, and then you then left it on your desk on the side, no one's going to be able to see it or know what it is that you do, and a website works very much the same way. So think about your marketing plan or a digital marketing plan, different campaigns and strategies that you're going to want to implement. Think about all of these different elements before you start to develop your website.
And
Yep.
there's one thing that if you think back in the old days of marketing internationally, companies used to prepare a company profile. And that would talk a little bit about the history, its structure, show pictures of the factory and the brochures of the products. And every time you went and visited someone overseas, you'd leave that as your silent marketing man. It was your leave behind marketing collateral that told the story. Now you've got to actually move your marketing philosophy onto the web. It's got to have your company history because people like to know that you've been around a little bit. They want to see your structure. They want to see your products. They want to see some testimonials. And before, when in the old days when you had a hard copy company profile, some people still carry them around, the glossy books. They're out of date the moment they're printed. With your website, once it's built correctly and you understand how the mechanics of it work, you can, the moment you get a new client testimonial, bang, it's up on there. If you open a new factory, bang, it's up on there. You release a new product, bang, it's up on there. So this is your company profile online to help you market your products internationally.
And I'm famous for always saying that a website is a living, breathing thing, and the reason why it is that is, to Ian's point, because you have the ability to constantly update it and keep your marketing information fresh. If you do need help building your marketing strategy, the federal government actually come up with a program called the Digital Enterprise Program that provides businesses with free coaching to help them understand how to enhance their digital capability. If you visit the federal government's website, you'll be able to find a location or a provider of that service near you. So I encourage you to do that.
The other thing is that as a marketer and as a consultant of helping people engage electronically in the world through websites, every single day of the week we get an email from somewhere in India or China or somewhere high-tech engaged saying we can build you, we can help you develop your business, we can help you build your website, anything from $500 up. And so we get what we call a call to action from an Indian or Chinese web developer. Yes, you can buy a website for $500, even $1,000, but that's all they're worth. We're not saying don't do it. We're saying that if you're going to engage with these overseas web developers, it's not a problem. As long as you understand how to talk technically to that web developer, how you can translate the aesthetics of an Australian ideology to that web developer. Does the web developer have an understanding of the social media and its impacts in Australia? How accessible are they after they've built the website? 1 year later, 2 years later, you want to go back and rebuild it or change it? Are they still around? Don't know. Or have you got to start from scratch again? Or what permissions have they given you to go in there and change things yourself? Are they available when you want to speak to them? So, and actually, do they understand marketing strategies? They might be very good at cutting, pasting, and putting this and that, but a good website has a strategy behind it,
Absolutely.
whether it be a selling strategy or a marketing strategy. And so think about it. You can get a website for 500 bucks, no problems, but that's all you're getting. And but the caveat there is we're not saying don't do it. It's just saying make sure you understand the language, the technical language of how a website's built. So when you have a discussion with that web developer, you can actually get the message across to him.
And you're getting what you're needing, not, just a thing. So one question we get asked all the time when it comes to designing or developing websites for overseas is whether it's important to have a website for each market that you're entering into, or if it's fine just to have the one. My answer always is it depends on what it is you're trying to achieve, what your strategy is, and the market you're entering into. So as an example, if you're selling into China, with our Australian exporters, our clients at the moment who are exporting into China, we recommend that they actually have two websites. So one that's an Australian-based website for the Australian custom, and then a Chinese website for their Chinese customers, as it's then housed within the firewall. So if you have an Australian website and you're trying to get Chinese traffic to the Australian website, it's obviously, it's often very difficult to access, or very, very slow. And so obviously, as you would know yourself, if you're waiting 5 minutes for a website to load, you're just going to get annoyed and go away. So we recommend in that situation that a person would host the website within the firewall in China.
In fact, we actually practice what we preach.
Yeah.
We have our own operations. The Chamber Australian Business Consulting Solutions has our own operations in Shanghai. We actually have our own Mandarin website behind the firewall in China to enable our members and exporters properly promote their products overseas. But we also have obviously our own English websites in Australia.
Another example is there's a trade client of ours who was selling quite a technical product, and they were wanting to sell it over into the Middle Eastern market. Now the Middle East, Arabic is read from right to left, not left to right like English, and the product that they were selling was quite technical in nature. So then that business owner was then quite heavily reliant on people translating properly, or properly translating the technical element of that product. So what we suggested to them was to develop a Arabic only website that was then hosted within that Arab country, and then that way their target market could read and interpret the technical aspects of that product properly. As a result of doing that, they've secured 3 really big clients, and they're on their way to huge success in the Middle East. One thing that you could do if you wanted, again, depending on the market that you're entering into, is having the one website and then having a language translator. But again, it really, I think the message is it depends on your strategy. So you need to carefully think about the market that you're entering, your target audience, and how it is that they need to engage, so you develop something that's appropriate for them. Regardless of the purpose of your site, if it's to sell online or to educate people, make sure it's easy for people to engage with you. So there's a rule of thumb that I should be able to get where it is I need to get on a website within 3 clicks. So making it really easy to make a sale. So if I like a product, I can select it and go to the checkout and go through that process really easy. If I want to contact you, then make it really obvious where I can click on an email address or fill in a contact us form. Making it really easy for people to download an ebook or sign up to an e-newsletter. Just making it very clear and simple. People don't like choice. You've got 8 seconds to impress somebody when they're on a website. It's no different overseas. Often, your additional challenge in overseas market is they may not know who you are, so you need to be really quick off the mark and making it as simple and easy as possible for people to navigate your website as possible.
Just on that too, just getting back to that last example on the Middle East, Layla, as they read right to left, which is the way Arabic script is written, we actually had to undo a website that was built in an offshore location because they actually had it all blocked to the left-hand side of the page. It was a total mess, and nobody could read it because the person who built the website did not understand Arabic culture, and he thought the layout should be just the same as everybody else, and built the website accordingly. And the click on buttons, which we're so used to having on the right side of the computer, should have been on the left, and vice versa. And the language, as I said, was blocked the wrong way. So it's important we keep it simple, and as Confucius said, but we do insist on making it complicated. But that's why Layla's here.
This is true.
It takes the complexity out of this. Sometimes what's considered by a really not experienced internet tech, quite simple.
Well, I try, Ian. So the next question then that we get asked a lot is to translate or not to translate. And again, it might get a little bit frustrating that I keep saying this, but it does depend on the market that you're entering into and what your strategy is. What we're trying to do here is just to really raise different questions that we get asked all the time. So with the translation, in a country like China, for example, many consumer goods, especially high quality or high fashion consumer goods, there's a recommendation that you combine English and the native tongue. So because the English language is then holds that high quality and it allows you to communicate that the product is of high quality. Even if you are marketing or exporting to an English-speaking country like the US, for example, it's then important that you change the way that you spell the words, so you're translating your English into English that they understand. So I know I get frustrated whenever I see realize, for example, spelled with a Z on an Australian company website, because it's not how we spell realise in Australia. And the same is the case for the US market as well. So looking at making sure that you are putting Zs where you're supposed to put Zs, or you're putting an O in mum, for example. Americans are quite territorial and are really passionate about American products. So the moment that they realise that your spelling isn't Americanized, then you may then put them off, and as a result lose the sale.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions that just popped up here. Anne says, is our Chinese website in Mandarin or Cantonese? I can assure you it's in Mandarin. And Derek's asked, can we help with translating messages on social media? Yes, absolutely, no problems whatsoever. Just get in touch with Layla and we can organize translations. That's not a big issue. But just on the translation, to translate or not translate, I guess a personal experience that I had when I was living and marketing in Southeast Asia. We went to, in the early days, we went to exhibitions in China. And I said to my agent in Hong Kong, who was managing China at the time, do not ever translate my English company name, which happened to be quite a strange name, and on a good day it was RQ, AARQUE. And I said, that's the name, don't translate it. IBM don't translate, Xerox don't translate, etc., etc. Don't translate. But when I arrived at the exhibition, there was some Mandarin script above my on the shell scheme above on my stand, and I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "It means Kui. That's the name of your company." And I said, "I told you not to do that." Consequently, over the next couple of days, people walked past and burst out laughing and kept on walking. Nobody walked onto the stand, which was quite devastating. And I spoke to one of the interpreters that I had also engaged there and said, "Why are people laughing?" And they said, "Well," and they pointed to the sign and said, "That stands for Arqui." And I said, "Yeah." Well, Arqui is a little story a story about a man who is told by mothers to children, never be like Arqui. He was the village idiot. He was always in trouble. He was in jail and he eventually got hung. So everybody walking past here is looking at you as the village idiot. So that's why they're laughing. And that was a really, really important message which I drove home to my agent in Hong Kong as I tore the translation down and found some Technicolors to write up the real company name. So you've got to think about translate or not translate. You can get yourself into a whole lot of bother no matter which market you're in. Oh, also the next thing we've got to think about is what is it? What looks important? It's a good thing to think about. Going back to some of our earlier points, tailoring your site to suit your audience. The website aesthetics are just as important. Colors can be very offensive. We just did a website for some cosmetics companies going into the Japanese market, and they wanted everything with a sort of black, dark charcoal sort of background, etc., which is not the color for China. And we had to have some lengthy discussions and show many examples about how no one else had ever done that, and there must be a good reason. So we actually have a lot of experience in understanding the cultural nuances of colors, of languages, of images that fit each of our key markets. If you go to an average China website that's particularly doing B2C, it is absolutely crazy. There's more stuff on it than you can possibly read. But that's the way it happens in China. If I try to put that website up in America, it's going to be turned off on the spot. I'll probably have about a 1-second visit. Because in America, just like in Australia, we want it to be very
clean and organized.
Yeah, clean and organized. It's easy to follow. It's not complex. It's not jumping around all over the place. It doesn't have flashing lights. So an ultra clean basic website is good for America. A totally busy, messy websites are really good in certain parts of Asia, but not others. So when you speak with a proper consultant, whether it be with us or whether it be with your web developer or the overseas web developer, do they understand the nuances of the aesthetics of a website and how important it is to look like in a particular destination?
It's almost going back to International Marketing 101 and looking at what you should do and shouldn't be doing in each of those markets. So there's a question then where we get a lot from exporters is, do I buy all of the URLs that are available for my business? So do I get .com, .com.au, .ch, .uk, .nz, .jn, do I buy all of them? Is it better to have only the one URL or to have many URLs? Well, the way I think about it is, I know myself, when I'm looking up a business's website in Australia, I have a tendency to type in .com.au because that is our country's URL. People would be doing the same thing in their own country. And if you don't buy that country-specific URL, you're then running the risk that you're driving people that are looking for your business to a competitor's website or to a website that's completely unrelated at all. So you are running the risk, if you don't purchase all of those domain names, that you are losing your customers. What you could do is then purchase all of those URLs and have them redirected to the one site. So we're not saying that you have to purchase .com when you're in America and then build an American website. You can have .com and redirect it to your main Australian website if you wanted to. But again, depending on what your strategy is, like what we've discussed before, but it is recommended that you do buy each of the country-specific URLs. While we're looking at a mobile phone on the screen as well, we would also then recommend that you ensure that your website is mobile responsive, so that your website is compatible for tablets, for mobile phones, and all types of mobile phones. We don't necessarily, for most businesses anyway, recommend that you have a mobile specific website. We recommend that people build responsive designed websites. So, and the reason for that is that a responsive website will obviously rejig itself depending on the device that it's being viewed on. So you're then not having to, it's almost future proof. So when iPhone come out with iPhone 7, it's suitable for that as well. As we all know, mobile usage and visitation to websites is surpassing desktop usage in Australia and most overseas countries. And in fact, in a lot of overseas countries, they don't even have desktops. They've gone straight to the mobile phone because the mobile phones are so cheap, especially the ones that are smartphones. So there's not even a use for mobile, for desktop actually sites in some of those countries. So it's something to consider. So as soon as you finish from this website, from this webinar, go and see if your website is mobile responsive or not.
The other thing there is, just reiterating what Layla was saying, if I walk down Nanjing Road in Shanghai, there is not a single person that is not looking at a mobile phone. They are so mobile and engaged. It's a wonder there's not more accidents, because you can get trampled to death with people just reading their mobile phones. Mind you, walking along George Street today, I had the same experience. But thinking about the URLs, you can start going online to register them or get assistance in registering them. But you've obviously got an export marketing plan. There's no point in trying to register your or going to register right across the world if your marketing plan in the next 5 to 10 years does not include those countries. So try and just lock in the ones you've got which you want to market to. Other people from around the world can still find you, but if you've locked in your URL, should you then want to market and employ a distributor or an agent, you actually own the URL for your company in that marketplace. That gives, once again, you control on the brand and control of your strategy.
So something to think about. So as Ian mentioned before, there's a legal side to everything, and what we've found is that many exporters that we've worked with have forgotten to do their research on the legal side of exporting to overseas markets. So we recommend that you go and investigate each country's privacy policy, their social media policies, sharing information with third parties, their views on certain aspects of terms and conditions, refund policies, return policies, all of those different things. As Ian mentioned earlier, the US, there's almost 52 different versions of legislation because each state has its own slant on the legislation. So you need to make sure that you do your due diligence and investigate what you're legally required to adhere to. We recommend that you do seek legal advice. And you allow time for any approvals that you have to go through. In China, for example, it's important. If you want to go on some social media sites, on Baidu, which is their version of Google, you have to go through an approval process that can take up to 6 weeks. So those things need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at exporting. So currency, and there's a couple of things that you should think about when it comes to currency. It's not only about if you're going to display the cost of the product on your website in your local currency or in that country's currency. Are you going to use a currency converter? Or are you just going to display everything in Australian dollars? There's transaction fees. There's the strength or weakness of the Australian dollar and how that's going to affect your profit margin. So if we start with looking at conversion, for example, someone's going to get charged for conversion fees. It's inevitable. What you need to decide is whether you are going to wear it as a business or if you're going to allow or put that onto your consumer. So if you're a business based in Australia, and you're selling to Singapore, for example, and you're selling in Singapore dollars on that website, then you will get charged the conversion fee. However, if you're an Australian-based company and you're selling to somebody in Singapore and you sell the product in Australian dollars, then that consumer will get charged the conversion fee. So a lot of businesses automatically think, well, I don't want to cop any more fees, so I'm just going to pass that on to the customer. But then it becomes an issue of customer service. And if it's something that's minimal that you should then take on board as a business to improve your customers' experience with your organization. So as an example, I use a story about the local coffee shop that I go to every morning. So I go and see them every single day, often twice a day. And for the purpose of this webinar, I actually calculated how much money I would have spent with them over the last couple of years. And it's up close to about $3,000. One day I went in there and I didn't have any cash on me, so I had to use my FPOS card, and because my purchase was under $10, they were going to charge me a 50-cent fee. That then put me off because I thought to myself, I've been a loyal customer. I've been coming to you for 3 years. I've given you $3,000 of my hard-earned money and you're going to charge me 50 cents. So it comes back down to, that's the type of thinking that people will go through when they're looking at purchasing on your website. So it's again that thought of, what's more important to you, the $3,000 or the 50 cents.
Or a customer like Layla.
Too lazy to make my lunch. One other thing as well that you should look at is transaction fees, being open and honest, shipping fees, those types of things. People often don't mind to pay them if you're open and honest with them about it. The other thing to think about as well is the strength or the weakness of the Australian dollar and how that's going to impact your profit margin. And how you use that, especially in today's climate, to market your product. So it could be that you're going out there to the marketplace and saying, buy from us, we're an Australian market, Australian business, and you're going to get good bang for buck because the Australian dollar is a little bit weaker than what it was, a year or so ago. But what you do need to consider is almost the averages and what that's going to look like over a couple of years, because it would be frustrating from a customer's point of view if you were to put your prices up one year, put them down the next year. So you need to then look at kind of hedging your bets almost to say, okay, what are we going to do and how's that going to impact our profit margins for the long term. If we have a look at the top 5 countries that we went through at the beginning of this webinar, you could basically guarantee that they know the US conversion rate to their local currency, which then makes purchasing decisions easier. So it could almost be, or something to consider, would be then displaying your products in US dollars on the website. So speak to your advisors and get some recommendations with that. But things to consider.
Yeah, your foreign exchange. There's a lot of FX dealers around that can assist you with this type of payments and payment gateways and understanding of currency movements and the advantages, plus and minus, of which way you travel on your pricing your product on a website.
And no right or wrong answer. I think what we've been, it depends on what your strategy is, and what your export plan is. So when it comes to payment gateways and logistics, if you are a website that is planning to sell online, you then need to consider, okay, well, how do we handle all the different operational aspects of that process? Are you engaging service providers that your end consumer trust? And how's that all going to work for you and your business? So we've looked at platforms that we use, that we've worked with developers, with exporters to help them develop their online presence. One thing that you should think about is that different gateways have different registration processes. They have different certification requirements. So you do need to do your research and make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into, and that you allow yourself enough time. So I think it's the planning process is really important with all of this. For shipping, for example, we would recommend Australia Post. Again, depending on the market that you're entering into. If you're going to the US, for example, they have a lot of faith with UPS, so that would be something that you could consider. What we've got on the screen is a couple of the payment gateways that are available, that are out there in the marketplace. Alipay, for example, is really popular in China, the same as UnionPay. I think almost every single person in China has a UnionPay card. So there's, again, different markets, different courses for different horses. But one thing that you could consider, again, is whether or not, if you're going to go into multiple markets, do you use the one provider? So do you go in and your merchant is then PayPal, for example, to make your business processes easier? Or, if you're going to have multiple gateways and logistics providers in multiple countries, and then what that means for you.
So just on that, you'll find that a lot of these payment gateways, depending on the country you're in, due to the restriction of the movement of currencies and the suitability and the availability of certain currencies in the banking system, they're predominantly US-based payment systems,
Yep.
US dollar-based payment systems. So it sort of, in some cases, forces you to consider on your e-commerce platform what currency you're going to use. There's also another carve out there that you might be selling a bulky good, which is quite easy to logistically move in Australia. And if someone comes in from America and buys your 4 cubic meter fridge online, are you going to be able to do it? The answer is no, because the electrics won't work, the plug won't work, and it's too expensive anyway. So you better have some carve outs there on can you buy this product overseas? No. Can you buy it in Western Australia if you're based in Sydney? Don't know. Think about the product, how the logistics work, and what sort of caveats or carve-outs you're going to put around your ability to sell and service that market.
Okay. The user experience is something that's becoming more and more of a buzzword in the marketing space, but essentially it's made up of 3 elements: the look, the feel, and the usability of your site. And it's important to consider these aspects if you're an exporter or not, but more importantly if you are an exporter, because the way your potential customer will engage with your site will be different depending on the market. So again, it goes back to some of the things that we've been speaking about previously, about different buying behaviors and those types of things that you need to consider that in your user experience. So some top level things to think about is ease of use. Is it easy to get around your website? Can I find what I'm looking for? Back to that 3-click to get to where I need to be type thinking. Do you have adequate calls to action on your website? Are you prompting people to make the decisions that you need them to make and kind of move them through the cycle? As much as people would disagree, consumers actually do not like choice. So we like to be told, what, or guided more to what it is that we need or should be doing.
You're saying psychology has come in here to
Yeah,
socially
absolutely.
guide you, whether you want to be
Guide
guided
you.
or not. It will just happen.
Yeah.
And that's how a good website works, to take out the complexity of thinking about what do I look at.
Yep.
We've actually put a strategy into the marketing creation of the website to actually drive the outcome that we want to have as an outcome, and also to reduce the frustration of the user experience.
Absolutely. It's then also, having relevant content on your site and regularly updated relevant content. So are you writing to that target audience? Are you thinking about some of the things that they go through that they would be experiencing, and are you communicating that well? Frequently asked questions, those types of things, are you helping them out? And building trust. So think about what your target audience would be looking for. Some of those things that Ian mentioned before about having company profiles, that about us, those types of things. Have you got awards and testimonials and all of those type of elements on your website? So again, the user experience, extremely important.
So just on that, should your website be actually built to enable Google Analytics? So you can
Absolutely.
if I remember correctly, Google and the various other web crawlers, etc., look at websites that have been regularly updated.
Yep, definitely.
So you must have the ability of the website to do it yourself, or you've got to engage someone all the time.
The way that we work, I used to always work on corporate marketing, so this is the first agency that I've ever run. And the reason why it was really important for me and what we do is that we build sites that allow you to do what you need to do when you need to do it. So when you're working with a developer or a marketing agency, they should be building your website on a platform that has a CMS that allows you to make content changes yourself. They should also be putting in the little tiny bit of tracking code on your website that enables you to look through Google Analytics to see how people are engaging with your website and what they're doing, so that you can then use that information to make your website stronger and to boost your rankings. Google's algorithm is also changing so that relevant content, regularly updated content is starting to help obviously boost your SEO and help you to become the more referred to website. Google's obviously in the business of making sure that people that visit Google get what they want easily, and so it's the reason why they're starting to make content and that stuff more important.
So if I put up today a Black Friday sale in America, I can have a look to see if through analytics I can see if I'm getting more hits.
Absolutely, and how many people are clicking on those, how long that they're staying on that for, where they go to after they've clicked on that page, what they're doing before or after, how they came to that. There's a whole pile of information to give you the insight into your consumer, how they're engaging with you, and again, so that you can make even better marketing campaigns for the future.
Okay, so now to finish off, Layla, take us through some of these funny acronyms that float around in the world of online media.
I know, marketing, we're quite visual, so we like a little pretty picture. But when you're building your website, I think what we've been raising throughout this whole webinar, and what I wanted to really end on, is that you need to make sure that you're not just thinking about the website in itself. It's also thinking about what you need to do with that website afterwards. So looking at social media integration, for example, you've got different social media sites in different countries. So for example, in Japan, they've got, they use Twitter and Facebook, but they also have their own social media. For example, Line, which is a mobile messaging application that's similar to WhatsApp. They've also got something called Mixi, which is becoming the leading social network platform because it's based on a private network and uses online pseudonyms. So it's about looking at what you need to do to with your website after you sent it live, and also the different social media or Google. For example, China doesn't have Google, they've got Baidu. So it's about tailoring what you're doing to that specific market, I suppose, in summary, is the point of this. So it's again, what hangs off that site.
Right, well, folks, that's brought us to the end of this webinar. I've got a question here from Neville. I'll come back directly to you on that. I've just got to do a little bit of research and speak to you about your product and your intended destinations. But thank you very much for all of you for staying online. I'm glad to see we only had one drop off, and he apologised. So we hope you got benefit out of it. If you need any assistance on your marketing strategy, on your sales strategy, on your cultural and aesthetic strategy to help you export, to grow your exports, to inculcate maybe a website as a part of your online export strategy, please give us a call. We're actually practitioners of the trade. We're doing it ourselves. We are an online exporter, and we're happy to help you and take you through some of the pluses and minuses that we have experienced, resolved, and moved on with. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you. And for the questions that are just popping up now, we'll get back to you directly because the time is now 1 o'clock and it's my lunchtime. Thank you very much.
See you.